school roller coaster tycoon games that it's all about simulating theme parks and everything, which, uh, has a couple limitations in it that I've noticed as far as, you know, properly simulating a ride. I know that there's another roller coaster simulator out there called No Limits 2 that's supposed to be much more accurate and allow you to do stuff like transfer tables and switches and all sorts of stuff. Some things that the designers of this game have talked about adding for a while. It's just not quite there yet, I don't think. So this is a sandbox theme park. This is one that I loaded up to just try out some stuff and test it. Obviously, there's not a lot to it. I was testing out this coaster as a boomerang style coaster with the reverse lift on it, and I wanted to try that out when they introduced it not that long ago. This is one of my designs I used to do in Roller Coaster Tycoon, and actually it's still pretty damn popular as far as in the game. The excitement, fear, and to nausea level is actually pretty good. So, and this is one of those coasters designed to launch at the same time. Although designing two coasters identically in this game is very difficult. You can kind of see that I don't have my tracks aligned properly, which means that one of the coasters is always going to be a little bit ahead or behind. But for the purposes of trying this stuff out was okay. And then I've got a train here that was using trying to test out if the game was actually using the railroads properly to actually get the people where they wanted to go. I think in the beginning when this game first released, that people would just get off at the next station, which is what this was test. It's just a loop. Now I think they'll actually stay on the train, if I'm not mistaken, until the station they actually want. It's actually broken down right now, but I'm not even actually sure if I have any engineering staff on hand. Well, I do. I don't know where he's at, though. Oh, at the wrong station. So, just create another mechanic there. Not that it really matters, because that's not the purposes of this video. So I wanted to try out doing the Giant Dipper from San Diego. Ran into a few issues with this. Number one, designing the station with the assets that come in has been pretty difficult. I can't do it exactly. Also, up until recently, I couldn't do the tunnel either for the same reasons. It's kind of that trying to add things in here was going to end up clipping against the track, and I don't know if I have walls and stuff short enough to actually get in here and make the tunnel. I think that they added a no clip feature now, so I might give that another try. So I tried to do this by watching the video over and over and over again, and after I wrote it for the first time last year, one of the problems that I've noticed is I wasn't able to duplicate the trains exactly, as far as I think the number of cars and another number of people per cars, which I didn't think it would matter, but I'm kind of wondering if that actually does. I'm kind of wondering if the game is actually calculating weight. Because I hit some spots on the tracks where it's kind of dead. There is a small decline in the track here to try to keep it moving. I don't know if the prototype actually has any sort of rollers or anything to keep the train moving through this area, if it's all gravity. If it is all gravity, then I've definitely got an issue somewhere here, because all the pictures and everything I've been able to find does not show a significant dip in the track. But I had to do some at some point just to keep the train moving. And I don't know that there's any way to kind of grease the wheels, so to speak, or make the track easier to flow through. I did have to add rollers at some point just to get it the rest of the little way. Other than that, I went through a number of revisions on this before I finally found one that worked. The last part of the ride over here is another spot where it really got kind of hairy as far as the... I just could not get the train to continue. Just not enough momentum, I think. And when I started to look at the prototype again, I thought, well, I could try to raise these hills higher. Well, then the hill further back has to be higher too, and everything. Obviously, I have to have just the right amount of momentum to get it over and through. So when it gets to the back part of the ride here, it gets really slow. I'm not really happy with that yet, and I'm not quite sure what to do about it yet, but Same thing on the brake run. This isn't really a brake run so much as a got to get the train continued to move run. There is a brake run at the very end here, but I know the prototype has a much more, feels like it has a much more defined lift at the end here, and there's enough momentum that the train continues to roll, and then I think there's probably a little bit of a decline on the track to keep the gravity moving. Obviously on the prototype also, there is a section over here where the transfer table is, and the train storage would be back here somewhere. Again, I'm not able to simulate that in this particular game, so okay, let me see, give it a try and see what it looks like in front of the actually riding. So you can see how slow it is back here, and this is actually, normally I have the game speeded up when I'm playing just because it takes forever to earn money in this game sometimes, depending on how your rides are doing, but yeah, you can see it actually picks up speed in the station, but that's okay. So we'll let the characters, whoop, gonna have to switch back in there. I actually apparently was on a person, I thought I was on the train. Not the one I want. There we go. So I've actually tried doing 3 trains on here before. The first block section apparently is at the top of the hill. So with 3 trains, that's not accurate for the prototype as far as I'm aware of. I think the prototype just has 2. But with 3 trains, I'm generally able to have one loading, one going over the first hill, and the other one towards the end of the ride or coming up on the brake run before the train in the station dispatches. So you can see it definitely does slow down here, and that the runners there are necessary, unfortunately, just to get it to the first lift hill. Also, obviously not accurate to the prototype or some of the supports on some of these hills. That's just how the game deals with the tracks running kind of over each other and everything. I could probably spend some time and actually add just some of the wood planks myself in there just to make it look accurate, and I've seen plenty of people that do that on YouTube, and the results are really nice, but it's obviously very time consuming. So of course I don't have the boardwalk in the background or any of the other rides. You can definitely see the slowdown. It gets really bad here towards the end. And I wish there was something I could do about that. I'm just not quite sure, other than adding more rollers and everything to try to continue on. I also don't know where the other brake sections are in this ride. I'm assuming there are some. Just because generally, I mean, this is an older coaster, but I know most modern day coasters tend to have brake sections throughout the ride in case there's an issue. I also happen to remember that I think maybe I'm not so far off on this bottom part of the design as far as getting the coaster to the first lift hill, just because I seem to remember there being some issues sometimes where the train wouldn't get it all the way for some reason. They actually had to get out here in the tunnel and push it the rest of the way to get it to engage with the lift hill. So, but like I said, I just added runners here in a couple different spots just to get the thing all the way. But otherwise, I think it's fairly accurate as far as the actual design, the track layout. This part was definitely a little difficult to figure out, just because on the map on Google Maps that you see part of the tunnel, I think, up here, and it's not very obvious how that actually runs. I think one of the original things I actually had was the track coming straight out here and then making a much larger loop before it came back in. And then I happened to find some really old pictures of in some video, I think, of the lights on in the tunnel or something, and someone pushing a train or riding down the train through the tunnel, and you could clearly see that it actually curves over, and then you start to look at it and it's like, oh, it follows underneath the other tracks. So yeah, overall, and I mean, it's not a, as far as the game is concerned, it's not a horribly exciting ride, but so I put this in, I think the total track cost, I think, was around, I want to say it was around 9,000 or something, 9,000, something like that. 7 or 9,000, I should say, in the game. Every map that I've put this down on, it's actually become a fairly popular ride, which is pretty nice because, you know, for kind of a lower cost roller coaster, you know, there's certainly some maps on the game where having a roller coaster that is extremely, you know, intense is not necessarily the best way to do it. So, in any case, that's the Giant Tipper, and you know, maybe, as I said, if I find some more resources on it, maybe I'll find some ways to make this a little bit more accurate, or find some ways to speed it up on the back half of the ride, maybe. But